Good afternoon, everyone, or GM to you if you're on the West Coast, or good evening if you're over in Europe or Asia somewhere. Thanks for joining us for Bitcoin Builders. We do this show every Tuesday at about 1:30 Eastern Time. I'll be joined here shortly, I believe, by our CMO at Arch, Nick. I'm Brian with the Arch team, and we've got a panel going here. Joined us for a discussion on trading. We're going to be digging into trading strategy. So, welcome, Nico. Thanks for coming. B Ways, Sleepless. I see there's some other people down in the audience. If you'd like to come up and join the conversation, then you're welcome. Just click request, and we'll be digging into all things trading. I kind of want to start out with just kind of that biggest, most zoomed out view. Uh, this concept that I've had in my mind about, this conversation is kind of centered around the cycles of crypto. We're all familiar with, I think that when that comes, that term comes into the conversation, people immediately think of the Bitcoin cycles, 4-year cycle, and it's an argument of whether that's going to continue in the future. But that's not really what I'm referring to. I'm speaking more so about the cycles of trading crypto. The concept of Bitcoin versus altcoins, meme coins. Obviously, we know that NFTs, they could be considered an altcoin and trade as these like low market cap, low supply type meme coins. There's that whole concept. But I wanted to start with just this real zoomed out view. Where do you guys think, and I think we'll start with just a very brief intro. I'm gonna go to B Ways first, and then Sleepless, and then Nico, and then anybody else that comes up to join the conversation. We do have a couple other people that should be joining us here shortly. I just want to kind of start with that zoomed out view. Like, where do you peg yourself in your thought process as far as like how do you define the cycles of crypto? Does it all start for Bitcoin to you? It kind of seems that way for most people. I know I'm answering like my own question a little bit, but is that where it all starts for you? Or do you really try to stay even more zoomed out to that like macro events level, different policies with global trading? We've got all the ETFs going on, obviously, in these last several years. Where do you kind of like anchor yourself when you're trying to trade the cycles, or get in and out, or make decisions that are on that longer time frame of this is my long-term plan for investing in crypto? I'm gonna go to B-Ways first. Welcome.
Hey, Brian. Thanks for hosting and good to be here with some legends. Look forward to the conversation. Yeah, this will be great to hear other perspectives as well because I'm personally on the kind of longer term focused investors. So I do obviously sometimes get into, short term metas, etc. But I definitely take this long term view. I'm a very fundamental ideological believer, to be honest, in crypto. So I believe that we go, as probably many people, we go many, many multiples higher as an overall crypto industry, right? And that starts with Bitcoin. I mean, there's no surprise. Um, for me to kind of make my investment decisions, broadly speaking, um, I do think about cycles, sure, right? Right. So like you roughly know where the bear market bottom is. So it was pretty clear. It was after FTX, for example. So that's kind of one bookmark essentially, and then you kind of have to form a thesis for the next 4 years or so. That was kind of how I thought about things. And to be honest, it was similar in 2017, 18. But I've been a bit more active this cycle, so I'm really operating on this 4 year ish or maybe longer time investment thesis, which makes it kind of easy to focus. Right, that always has to be this, at least in your mind, I think, a guidance or one focal point. One core principle, which for me is which for me are Bitcoin is the most important asset. We have probably 3 or 4 years to make investments here, right? Maybe a bit longer. Um, and then I think for me, what really changed, and which is what I guess what brought me ultimately here, is um, that I got even more focused on just Bitcoin and its ecosystem. thanks to the the advent of ordinals and a ton of other innovation happening on our chain, which I'm sure we'll talk about. So that really made in a way very easy for me. Is like in any case you should put 80% of your money in Bitcoin, right? Which I haven't done, but a fair bit of Bitcoin. But now it makes it even easier. You can put a significant chunk in Bitcoin and then ride the wave of innovation that I find super interesting on Bitcoin itself as well. So like 80% plus of my capital, time, um, and focus is on the Bitcoin ecosystem for the last 2+ years now, right? Which I find super it's kind of comforting for me at least. And then beyond that, I try to stay focused as well. So even if you take this 80/20 approach of like 80% in your key focus area, 20% in some other tail end stuff, even within those 20%, I'm picking like maybe two ecosystems. So I keep it very, very, very tight, let's say. And that might be like, what is the big new player of the cycle? Like one could argue, for example, hyperliquid, but whatever the hell you choose that thing is, right? And the other one might be NFTs across chain. That's kind of roughly how I think about it. So
Now, have you been
that's simple.
the world for very long? You're talking back to like 2017 era. Have you been, holding and trading crypto since then?
Yeah, I got in 2017 at some point. I mean, to be honest, probably most of it was towards the end of it. Like most people, I think, that entered that cycle in the kind of November, December 2017 era, but probably a little bit before as well. Um, yeah, I've been reading up on crypto since very early, actually. Like, I studied, I mean, Bitcoin came out when I was studying economics and finance, etc., in university, and I had some very, uh, how do you say it, anarchistic friends, in university, early university, kids that are 18, 19 years old. And I had a few friends who were reading up on Bitcoin. This is 2010, 2010. So that is actually really, really early. And so we were reading the white papers and had some friends buying. But at the time, it was more of a curiosity, right? We were just, this is interesting. And we're spending every day of the week learning about, modern economic theory and, the history of money and what is money actually in practice and in theory. But at the time, I mean, I cannot say like I built conviction, right? It was like, what is this asset that's worth almost nothing? And it really only came back on my radar, yeah, in that kind of 2017 era. So kind of obviously missed a trick there. Well, that probably would have paper handed, And then 2017 bought a bunch. I think I focused on life and work, normal life, normal work for a couple of years through that bear market. So just holding essentially Bitcoin. I think some Bitcoin, some Ethereum, probably some Litecoin. All the kind of all the coins from 2017 era, a few other things. And then um, before I pause, I really got really deep into crypto and NFTs again. Thanks to NFTs, that's actually been the main pull into the industry again for me. And in 2021, seeing the Beeple sale and there was definitely some new energy around the block. And then from NFTs, it went into pretty much everything again. So and now I'm just full time being fairly degenerate, but also making some investments in the space, etc. So that's my background.
Yeah, I definitely want to come back to that concept of, how we've kind of evolved in the altcoin realm. Like, you're talking about, the infamous ICO days, and then also there's, we've gotten to the where meme coins are like a altcoin unto themselves. So I want to come back to that concept, but let's go over to Sleepless and Chris. Thanks for joining us. I'll come to you in a minute. We're just kind of starting with this big zoomed out view of how do we define the cycles of crypto? Where does your thought process sort of start as far as your long term investment thesis? Are you really focused on like Bitcoin as the leader, Bitcoin, dominance, or do you zoom out more to like macro and like traditional finance or what's your thought process? So I'm gonna go to Sleepless next, and then Chris, we'll come to you, and we'll see if we can get Nico back up here in a second.
Hey, Brian. Thanks for having this and thanks for sending out the invitation. Always a pleasure to come up and talk about these kinds of things. But my story is a little different. I joined crypto in the height of 2021. So it was, I believe, the last week of December, which you guys recall, you had about a 3-month grace period until everything kind of came crashing down. But I lived in a very large house in college. I had roommates that had minted Neo Tokyo Genesis for free. They were printing left and right. And I was like, all right, I'm tired of all this. Like, it's time to figure it out. So I wasn't even really thinking about Bitcoin at the time. Even at the time, even one Ethereum seemed too expensive. And I couldn't believe people had 20 ETH PFPs and all this craziness. So I kind of started diving into the Ethereum trenches, joined different groups there, ended up doing pretty well with some ETH NFTs and calls. And eventually I met, he's actually in the audience, but Neighbor Favor in a server. And he came up to me and was like, dude, there's this thing called ordinals. They're like NFTs on Bitcoin. No one's talking about them. Like, I think we should really check them out. And he sent me the link for the Opium Mint, which at the time was free. And if you recall, they ran at like zero point 0.7 BTC, puppet airdrops, the whole deal from there. So we kind of went and created Taproot Alpha, which is one of the longest standing Bitcoin alpha groups. We were blessed to host what do we host? It was the Friends and Founders Mixer. It was right after the Inscribing Vegas event. We met a ton of people there, gave out some shirts. So it's kind of a blessing to have built all of that. I personally made most of my gains doing degen plays. I found pups at 2 cents, the token, multiple different ordinals, runes when we were early to that. So that was always kind of like my area of expertise. We developed a lot of different like bot and wallet trackers. And I was at like the unique age. I'm 25, almost 26 now, where I kind of like lived in this entire world of technology. So some of the memes that I saw and some of the things where I was like, "Oh, no, like, I get how this goes, like, this could be a good narrative that maybe some of the older crowd wouldn't see." Some things I would just tell people, "Hey, trust me, it's stupid enough to work." So that's kind of been my focus, it's been a bigger thing, but after I made a decent amount of Bitcoin and started looking at things differently and learning more about finance and the system, we realized all roads leads back to Bitcoin, and at the end of the day, even today, it's still holding 113,500 in a pretty dead market. I mean, things have been dead for us, but I've looked at this past year and I'm learning as I go. Like, I haven't even had a full 4 years or 8 years to speak on what a cycle is or how geopolitics affects it. But I've been playing a lot more defensively, capital preservation, hold as much BTC as possible, do as little as possible to sell into USD. If you have to, small bits and you make sure it's covered, make sure you find some accountants and stuff if you're off ramping. But I've looked at it as a preservation, but we're also blessed in our server that we have people in so many different facets of crypto. We have a guy who's named Prometheus. He's a fantastic leverage trader. He's literally live streaming every day, teaching people how to do that. If that's your avenue. We have people in the shit coins. We have people everywhere. So it's really finding, I think, a couple of things that you're good at. But when it gets dead and you see people are doing things elsewhere, you also can't be scared to step out a little bit and learn. So it's really we take all of this as no matter where the market goes, we've surrounded ourselves by very smart people who have done very well with the things that they do, and they're not going anywhere because again, they just want more Bitcoin. So that's kind of how I looked at this, at least.
Yeah, I love that. We love Taproot Alpha at Arch. Love that community. You guys are, really awesome. I love how, because we did a little Discord, call with you guys just to get to know the community a little bit more, introduce Arch. I love those kind of like insular type of event communities where you all hang out together, you spend a lot of time getting to know people and kind of building up that trust. One more question I want to throw at you. You're being in an alpha type group and trying to be involved. I find myself, as I try to get into those sort of circles and trying to find the latest alpha, searching for it on the timelines. Obviously, there's group chats and discords and telegrams. How do you balance the sheer like amount of things that you could be paying attention to? Is it community? Is it people who are kind of, there with you grinding, learning with you? I know, you said you guys focus on education as well, streaming and trying to teach people how to understand indicators from the chart. Obviously there's other ways to get information about where things are going to go and trying to take your time in the market and spend it as wisely as possible. Do you guys really think about just trying to focus on what you're good at and then leaning on other people to learn from or get further into like gathering information from other people and leaning on community that way?
I think it's a little bit of kind of both there. There's things that I'm good at that I'm certainly not good at. And there's no shock about that. I'm not the best leverage trader. I'm not the best at meme coins. I'm a complete gambler. But there are people who are good at that, and we can lean on each other for things like that, which is great. But I mean, at the end of the day, we're an ordinals focused community. I would say like most of these people have been with us for over 2 years now. I think the server is like 2.5 years old. So, and most of these guys came from ETH with us from other groups. So we've all been with each other for a very long time now. So there's like that level of trust. And, we also have a ranking system. So kind of how I became a caller was I was given an opportunity and a platform, which is very hard as like an up and coming account. So with Taproot, we have multiple people in Bitcoin because we were just an Ordinals hub. Like there was no place to talk about it at the time. So we were like, hey, come join. We'll do our best to vet it. And, we did the best that we could. But multiple people like Cobra, Murta, like all these different people who've become like big influencers, we let them post because I'll be like, okay, if you make 4 good posts and people make a lot of money and you're helping people, we'll give you like the bronze role, and that'll let you be able to post in like bigger channels. And then, if you go on our server, you'll see it's like LIFO and everyone, they all have these different ranks because they've stepped up in different ways that's benefited the overall community. So we kind of encourage things like that. We want to recognize people and also give them a platform because there's things that I'll miss and there's things that Neighbor will miss and there's things that LIFO might miss. But at the end of the day, like even it's kind of ridiculous. I'm sure you guys all saw the Lebit booze that just came out. But we got pinged about that in like our 3+ holder chat. Unbearish Bear came in and was like, "Hey, take a look at this." And some of our mints were in the first 100. Like we started minting within the first 100 of them. And like that's DGen. You never know where it's gonna go. But we also know like certain people who work with certain people. So we can kind of assume like, hey, if this guy's involved with something, it likely means that these other people that usually will support the projects are also involved. And if they're involved and you can kind of see where that train goes, and we track all the wallets, we track all the social stuff. So we use that as an edge, which is different than traditional trading, but it's kind of the social game we play here.
Yeah, for sure. So we got Nico back up. I think I'm gonna throw the mic over to you, and then we'll come to Chris. What you got for?
Are we still on the same question? Yeah, yeah. The question for the big picture. So, all right. Every morning I get up, I sit on the throne, and I look at 3 things. All right. DXY, the dollar, and SPY. Literally. And they're all kind of well, SPY is kind of correlated, but DXY and Bitcoin are. Uh so the DXY can actually predict quite a bit just by looking at it. Like if it completely dumps, or if it or if it goes up high, like really, really high, that means we're at war. But anyway, uh, that's the big picture I look at. Now with the ordinals and all that stuff, I was pretty degenerate with that stuff. I did some nice trades. Pepinals, I minted Pepinals. I don't know if anybody knows about that one. I minted it for like $4 and they went up. I don't remember. I just remember the dollar value. It was like fucking $2,000. Like I couldn't believe what was going on with that. And I sold most of them at like 400 or 500. And then all of a sudden I wake up the next day and they're like $2,000 each. I'm like, I have one left. Like, what am I gonna do here? I didn't sell it like an idiot. But anyway, that was a nice trade, or mint, whatever you want to call that. And then the Solana memes and all that. I'll be fair with you guys. I was pretty good at spotting memes and every time I looked at it, I was like, we're just going into idiocracy slowly, you know? So like, just because some of the memes that are out there are just, I don't even understand why people like think of it as a meme. But anyway, everybody just like piles into some shit and it's complete shit. It's not even like a real meme. It's just complete shit. So ah, when it comes to that stuff, it's like, it's so weird. I tell people to avoid it. I actually said it, and I said it last time I was here. I prefer leverage trading over anything. Yeah, I'm holding a couple of things, but leverage trading is really at this point, not in the beginning even though at the beginning it's good too. at this point where we're at, just because you don't know where things are going, um, I would leverage trade. And like I'm gonna mention NFTs and ordinals. I'm gonna go back to that for a second. I do think that there's a run coming for NFTs and ordinals. I just don't know how good it's gonna be on ordinals. And I don't think the old stuff is gonna do anything. I like they'll go up a little bit, but I really think everybody's gonna go for the shiny new thing. Like, because everybody has like ADD in this face. They don't remember what happened yesterday. So I feel like the new mints are gonna obviously do a lot better. And we'll see from there. And then art, I don't know if it's gonna start at the beginning of the NFT run or the end of the NFT run. That's like a hit or miss. I know there's gonna be some art pieces coming out in the middle, but usually at some point it's nothing but art, and there's nothing going on with collections at all. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but there is like an art run during a literal art run, like before or after ordinals. So that's just the way I look at everything.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see how we've like evolved and I guess matured as an ecosystem, although it seems like riskier and riskier assets are being used as like longer term holes or holds, and people are just comfortable having these. So I mean, it's definitely something that I find interesting. I want to come back to that in a minute, but I do want to go to Chris specifically because Sleepless. You were talking earlier about the whole education aspect. Anybody who's been in crypto for, if you come and stay for any length of time, you quickly figure out just how much there is to learn and to always be learning. One thing that I like about you, Chris, a lot is how everything you do is kind of based on that aspect of learning and trying to like pull out better information so that you can first wrap your head around it. And that's part of your creative process, I think you told me at one point. And you're active on YouTube and like a bunch of different platforms. So, for you, I find it really interesting to have that I guess approach a little bit, but do you find that as sort of an advantage? And kind of where we're starting is this like zoomed out macro view. Like where do you peg yourself into your long-term understanding? Where's it start at? Is it Bitcoin? Is it like macroeconomics or traditional finance? Or maybe you came in from like Ethereum and that was like your bigger conviction on ramping. Where does it all start for you in that zoomed out beginning thought process level?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me, Brian. Can you hear me fine? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, sweet. Um, yeah, when I got into crypto heavier in the 2021, I kind of like explored a little bit in 2020. So I guess I'm late compared to a lot of the like OG Bitcoin now ordinals guys. I was like watching YouTube videos and just a lot of the people that made content would like skip over steps and it would frustrate the hell out of me. Like they would be like, "Oh, just like use this wallet to go to this Dex." And I'm like fresh noob and I'm like, "Well, how do I get the money to that wallet?" Cuz like there's no way at that time you didn't have like MoonPay and all the other ways to just like load a wallet from your credit card or whatever. So I'm just like, "All right, well you're going from A to Z, and you're not telling me the in between." So when I did like go in and study that's like how to do the basic stuff and eventually more advanced stuff, I'm like, well, I want to make content one day, and I want to answer the questions that I had because when I was listening to people and watching people, they were skipping over the small stuff that is just second nature to them, and I understand why you would skip over it, especially like on Twitter because a lot of people on Twitter know, but a lot of people on YouTube and other platforms like that might be their first time ever using a Dex or ever doing a swap or ever like doing anything. So you have to like literally like, explain it like they're five because like it's starting from scratch. So that's one of the things that got me into like crypto content specifically. I've always like done content, and yeah, like you said, like a lot of the stuff. If I'm making content around it, it kind of makes me like know the ins and outs of it. and sort of forces me to like have this, deeper understanding of it, because I don't want to get it wrong and I don't want to like lead people astray or anything like that. So typically that what the things that I do are pretty in the open, because when I'm doing them, I am making content about them. So yeah, I think that I don't really know the baseline question here, but that's kind of how I got into like cryptos, how I got into like deeper uh, aspects, layers of it, now in ordinals, runes, Bitcoin DeFi. I worked for not just Pizza Ninjas, but I worked for Bitcoin Frontier Fund, which is Trevor's fund that invests in 80 plus startups that are building on Bitcoin. I know like Xverse is on there, Bitflow, Liquidium, lots of others, and there are strategic investments as well. So during the almost year that I worked for the fund, that like increased my understanding of Bitcoin DeFi, like what's possible on Bitcoin, where it's going, this debate of exactly what Bitcoin is and how it should be used outside of just ordinals, but like these like protocols and builders that are actually like building on it. One admiring thing out of that year was it was 2023 maybe. So it was like a really bad year for the market, and there's people risking their whole net worth to like go all in on Bitcoin DeFi as far as like building products and projects and all that. And I always thought that was very admirable, because like I'm not a very like risk on guy when it comes to like large sums of money, but I mean, you had people like quitting their jobs to go all in to build on Bitcoin DeFi, and that was super cool. But yeah, man, I again, I'm sorry if I misunderstood the original question, but that's kind of, I guess, some of my answers.
Yeah, I definitely want to come back to you about some of the, like cross-chain type, I guess research is really a good word for it. You're on the level of like researching to the point of creating content that is very, very finished and well baked, which is awesome. I like your platform a lot. It's interesting to me to see the differences between YouTube content versus Twitter content versus TikTok content, and what works and why why it works, but that's kind of a different conversation for another day. I want to throw it over to Mush. You came up here. You want to jump in on this topic?
Yeah, I'd love to. Can you guys hear me? I'm on my desktop. Clear. Yeah, perfect. I think the education part is like super important, because there's such a learning curve when you come into Bitcoin, even if you come from another chain like Solana, Ethereum, those types of things. Uh, when I first got into crypto, like actually into crypto, I didn't understand the decentralization of Bitcoin and why it was so important. And I think if people start really getting into, the only thing with onboarding and education is it takes time, and content is so important for that, especially engaging content to be able to teach people this kind of stuff. So first of all, Chris, thank you for all the content you do. The second thing I wanted to bring up is back to ordinals. So I have this theory. Okay, I'm a big nerd. Okay, I like Pokemon cards. Okay, and back in the day, for like even like the original Pokemon card pack was like what, like $2, $3, or whatever it was when you bought it. Now they're worth so much more money. I think with ordinals, and this is further down the road. I think with ordinals, even like the rug projects that came out, I think they'll still have some validity, and see some kind of engagement, because the best part about ordinals is it's actually all the data is on chain. You know what I mean? It's always going to be there. You're always going to be able to see it. So I really think like in the future, like maybe not right away, but in the future, I think people will start valuing these collectibles as actual collectibles, and attaching it to some kind of emotion that they had when they purchased it. Um, that's just my thoughts, and I hope that's completely on topic. I kind of went off what Nico was saying, but also with what Chris was saying. But I do think as we keep growing, the ecosystem keeps growing, and more utility keeps coming out for ordinals, and innovators come in, and you start building these things that were on other chains that are now available on Bitcoin. I think we're going to see an increase in attention on ordinals, because I do personally think ordinals holds a lot more value than your average NFT, if you will. Because, and I mean, like Elon said this multiple times, but like it's a IPFS source, right? Like anything can be deleted, anything can be changed. They can go and change the metadata to have it. Like there's even been rugs on Ethereum, right, where the guys have minted out, and then they go and they change the image to like "fuck you, I rugged you." Pardon my language, but that's what happened. So like, like I think the real utility that Bitcoin really has and the education needs to revolve around the decentralization and that storage mechanism that it can't be changed, right? And how important hash rate is and multiple miners being induced into the ecosystem and more miners coming in, because the more miners we have from different organizations, the better, so that it can't be capitalized. So I hope I touched on it, Brian, and thank you for letting me guys up, and shout out to Arc for all the work that you guys have been doing. You guys have really been pushing this ecosystem. So
Oh, appreciate that. Yeah, appreciate the support. No, you're absolutely touching on like the thought thread. A little bit ago, I was thinking when B Ways was introducing, and I'll pose this question to you or B Ways if you want to jump in. This is kind of what I was going to ask about a little earlier. It seems to me that as we've come like further, like since I mean, we know that NFTs and everything started to come into existence very early in crypto. Even though they didn't start to pop off until, obviously 2021 is the big year that everyone thinks of with Bored Apes and everything that happened with all the CryptoPunks run up and everything. But it seems to me like there's been a bit of a like maturity in the way that speculation is happening. And what I mean by that is speculation in the past when it came to crypto was just purely number go up speculation. It was like, I'm going to buy this coin and I'm going to sell it for more later. And then we got to this point where it's like, okay, we're speculating on the utility of tokens. And then in it with NFTs, it was like it really got into speculating about utility. But it was just like totally imagined, like we say we can do this stuff and this wizardry, and supposedly you can do a lot of it with smart contracts and stuff on Ethereum and Solana and a lot of other chains. And we've seen things, like built with crypto utility, but it seems like ordinals has just like entirely changed what's going on with that whole speculation curve, where it's not just speculating on number go up. There's this like more maturity to speculating about the assets themselves, what they offer, different aspects of how it's on Bitcoin. Is that sort of like your thought process about how we've come these past like several years? Mush or B-Ways or anybody, if you want to jump in on this.
Just wanted to, I wanted to reinforce what Mush was saying. And I'll even go into what you're talking about too. But uh, I'm holding, I don't know how many, few hundred on-chain NFTs, and two of them they've been working the entire time. They have like really not big projects, but kind of difficult ones to do, right? And then the other one, it gets sales here and there, but the founder's nowhere to be found and whatever. But because they're on chain and like it's not gonna like you're not gonna get totally rugged like what happened with Nike. They didn't pay the server fees and everybody ended up with nothing. But so here's the thing, even like these layer twos on Bitcoin, because they're on chain and what's happening on it, I think that might be a thing. Like that might end up being a thing too, because I really do believe that art should be on chain if it's actual art. And now with protocols, let's see what happens. Pretty much, I can't predict that, but I am very interested in that part as well.
Yeah, it's like the back to Bitcoin umbrella. It fits under that umbrella of getting back to Bitcoin, and that has value in a lot of different ways. Mush, you were going to jump in on this?
yeah, so I think just communities alone have value, if you will. Like there you can have 10, 20 people that come together and really push something, right, that they believe in. Um, and I totally agree with you that you're complete right on the speculation. And I do think that like Pump Fun and these Solana tokens that have come out have really changed the dynamic, especially back in the day where it was like buy and hold to the moon, and now it's like buy and try to get a 20% increase. um I do think though, like the communities have power, and they if they band together and they start utilizing that power, it can really push things forward. Now, so I'm trying not to shill here, but like for instance, you're talking about like L2s and different L1s and that kind of stuff. Like we built Stake It like on top of Bitcoin. So like we literally use like Bitcoin's mempool to track everything that happens within our site, and confirmations have to go on before we even start staking or start doing these types of things. So our software is built on top of Bitcoin, right? And we use it to be able to track all of these things and make sure that like it's like a secondary layer of security for us, if you will. Um, I do think though that we're gonna see a different era. I don't know what kind of era it's gonna be, especially like I do think ordinals and NFTs are gonna have a comeback. And like Pudgy Penguins is like a prime example of like what you can do if you raise funds and you have the right leadership and you put your mind to something and you push something, right? And that community has supported Luca throughout everything, right? And I do believe that he's done things really good, like really right, from airdrops to empowering the community to always making sure the parties are good at IRL events, all those types of stuff. So I think if you combine everything that I just said with the power of the community and empowering that community, I do think that you're going to see a different era this time. I do think like ordinals, NFTs, when they do start to take off here, uh, it's going to be different than before. And I don't know. I can't predict the future. My name is Mosh, but I still can't predict the future. Okay, you guys, as much as I'd like to think I can, but I do think that we're going to see a different era. I think we're going to see communities come together, and I think we're going to see, and going back to even cross-chain things, I think we're going to see a lot of chains start working with each other, because some chains are actually better than other chains, if you will, for different things that you want to utilize, right? So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Sorry, I'm multitasking at the same time, dude.
You're fine. Yeah, so it's almost as if like now on Bitcoin, or one aspect that you're next to a little bit is this concept that the token is the asset now. It's not just a representation. Or at least that's where my mind goes, as one of the bottom lines that makes at least non-fungible tokens, but also the fungible tokens. You can think about it that way, as a more like concrete but still digital asset. It doesn't have anything physical in reality, but it's still tied to Bitcoin, which we know being like proof of work and all of Bitcoin's fundamentals, is something. It's not this like fugazi where or vaporware, that we're buying into or thinking about. Is that how you guys think about it a little bit as well?
I think, and interesting with ordinals in particular, if you look at it right now, on CoinGecko, I don't even think that there's a single Bitcoin project within the top 10 NFTs right now. The past month or so, we've seen a wild amount of CryptoPunk sales, like $8 million plus sweeps, hoodies getting bought off the floor. I mean, that alone, like the underrepresentation and what I would say is undervaluation of the Bitcoin ecosystem and the overall like NFT alt market that it is. Um, I think there's some legs up to be had there. But I mean, in reality, like a lot of these projects too, we've been around like for a long time, like the ones that are still here and still putting work in, like Node Monks, OMB, Puppets, Pizza Ninjas. Like a lot of these projects have played their hands, and some of them didn't even have much to speculate on other than runes and rune airdrops. And then that happened, and then some communities stayed around too. But I think it's good that we've gotten over that initial curve of, hey, like let's just get these to speculated on, because now it's more of people are buying communities that they like, that they vibe with, that they have fun with, that IRL representations. And again, not to show anything, but the Puppets is one of those projects where they didn't have a war chest, but they had like I think it's like around 6 to 7 people who like really work together and somehow continue to put on like massive events at IRL representation. And you go and you see merch everywhere, like the whole race car thing. And I think that was a pretty good, I mean, ideal of a community coming together there. But overall, just without seeing any Bitcoin projects in the top 10, like that's just pretty crazy to me. So I own a little bit of everything, so I'm happy for any project to take the lead here. So some do have some considerable war chests, and it would nice to be see all of that deployed back into the eco. But hey, high hopes.
Yeah, for sure. B Ways, I saw you unmuted there.
Yeah, I'm just gonna jump in. I maybe look at this a little bit differently on the speculation question, in that I think speculation is still rife everywhere, to be honest, in crypto. And I think what you're describing is like I mean, Brian, what you're describing is like less speculation maybe in the Bitcoin side. It's really just a focus on building, right? Because I think we did go through our high speculation phase when everyone was coming in from other ecosystems for like 2 months, like early last year. It was really just January through early March or something, call it 2, 3 months of speculation. And then what is left behind is like, it's not a wasteland, but it's essentially builders and some, well, obviously some bag holders, right? Which then kind of destroys the vibes a little bit. But also beyond that, really people that believe long term in the ecosystem. And I find some parallels with the Solana ecosystem after FTX collapse, right? So, which happened, whatever, early November 2022. And then, everyone's making fun of them, right? No one really believed that much anymore. People certainly from the Ethereum side calling Solana dead. And really what was left in early 23 is like the really, Solana believers, the hardcore ones, the people that had a vision that it would survive from single digit bucks, right? So I did feel some similarities with kind of what we've been going through. Call it like 2023 Solana is like not too dissimilar from this year or the last 12 months on the Bitcoin ecosystem, just because of the amount of the types of people that are still around. And so we're kind of in this post and pre speculation window in a sense, which is cool, I think. So I think the speculators will come when there's more to speculate on. I don't think they're gone per se. Like people are still around and people will speculate, like speculators will speculate. So that's maybe one comment. And and then you have like, the difference between the traders and the collectors. That's kind of an OMB meme that there's actually truth to it, which we've seen evolve over the last couple of years, like certainly since Solana memes took off, which is late 23 or something. So over the last 2 years, um, a lot of the speculation that happened in, NFTs in 21 and a bit in 22 moved to the purest form of speculation, right? Which is meme coins, and especially on fast chains, which is also kind of just ties into like how society has evolved, right? Like, I don't think you can even call, Bitcoin fungible trading, right? Like it's really just, that's actually more investing or long-term speculation. So people are used to that kind of Solana crazy, like high speed, quick rotation out of it. So that's kind of one side, which I think, we should talk about, right? I think Arch will probably contribute to at least bringing the Bitcoin ecosystem closer to that on the fungible trading side. I think very exciting prospect for all of us. It doesn't have to be Solana, but it can be something closer than what it is now, right? I think that's important. But then you have this total or almost total non-speculation segment indeed, like to Sleepless Point and a few others here, which, is on the high-end art side, right? Like, I was sure you have like high-level speculation, like by big accounts on punks, like these sweeps are not necessarily all to stack them away for 7 generations. So there's definitely still speculation, but it takes, if it's like a high value collectible item, it takes a lot of speculative public out of it, right? Because a lot of these people that speculate are doing it with small checks, and not with like 50K or 100K dollars, right? So I think you have that kind of part of the market evolving, and you can see that even on the Ethereum NFT side, there's really only 10 projects or collectors or artists doing well right now, and it's very art focused. And so my idea about, for ordinals is the same actually. So lesson I learned in the first major NFT cycle is that, it's better to focus on the top tier assets in your ecosystems, and then play around a bit or collect some small artists as well, of course. But in terms of most of your stack and capital for the long term, that's kind of what you want to do. So yeah, that's kind of a few different thoughts here, but that's kind of also
Yeah,
where ordinals go. Yeah.
you're kind of trending more toward like conviction as opposed to speculation. People who are speculating are in and out. They're buying something for a reason, for the number to go up with the intention to sell it after it goes up. But when there's conviction and belief in whether it's the ecosystem, the underlying token, the team, whatever it is, it seems that when you're on the conviction side of things, that's where you're in that more either collector or buy and hold, which is interesting. Like people have basically been collecting Bitcoin for ever since it's existed. So you can really even think of it that way as they're collectors of coins, and it is a bit of a more, I guess, long-term conviction play rather than just pure speculation a little bit. Do you guys feel like it's that way in like by ecosystem? And I kind of want to come to Chris a little bit on this because I know you spend some time in a lot of different ecosystems with being a content creator and creating crypto content. You've looked into a lot of different chains. Is this something that you see in as, being like a whole crypto thing, or is there a big difference when you go from one ecosystem to another, like from these early starting blockchains versus like the longer existing ones like Ethereum and Solana and whatnot?
I didn't hear the original question. I heard like after like the ecosystems and everything else after that.
Well, we're kind of like touching on this difference between pure speculation and that seems to be tied to really, really high velocity trading versus ecosystems where you don't always have that pure speculation. There's collectors, there's buy and hold. It seems to be a little bit more like long term when it comes to the people that are trading in those different ecosystems.
I think Nico can probably he raised his hand.
Go ahead, Nico.
So what I'm gonna say, I wanted to say it before, but I didn't get a chance to. Um, because this comes back to kind of what you're saying and with speculation and stuff. I'm actually speculating that whatever you're gonna call them on the layer twos, I guess ordinals or NFTs or whatever, I think that's when that's gonna push that market. The other markets like Solana and the other chains like Solana and Ethereum and Arbitrum now. I don't know if you know, but Arbitrum just linked a layer two for Robinhood. They've just been bringing like so many traders in from the traditional market, but they're gonna have access to pretty much everything now. Uh, so it all depends on what's gonna happen in the future and how they onboard people. Because I'm seeing a lot of the money on layer twos and it's spread thin instead of like just on Ethereum. So I really think that a layer two on Bitcoin would actually bring NFTs back or whatever you want to call them, ordinals, because they'll be able to get to where maybe Solana is, or well, actually, if the TPS that you guys are talking about is correct, yeah, you guys are going to be like past Solana, I believe, but or right there. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, interesting.
I personally think that, I mean, getting in when I got into Ethereum NFTs when those trenches were still alive, we used a lot of minting bots and trading bots, and just because it was high velocity, I feel like a lot of the times you were in and out of stuff. I mean, it was also a dead market at the time. Ethereum was like $1,000, but Bitcoin and getting into Bitcoin was interesting after that because naturally it's slower. You know, you're waiting 15 sometimes. I mean, when we were really hitting the mempool hard, like sometimes upwards of an hour just for things to confirm. And that naturally had a huge learning curve to it, which, originally shied many people away. But if you had just taken the time, I mean, it was also, there's plenty of benefits with having longer block times. Eventually we found out sniping and things like that. But when it's gotten to the point now, everything is so like user friendly. Like I've even onboarded like my buddy who I'm going to be his best man, like for his like birthday, I told him to download an X wallet, send him a whole bunch of random things. And now he's texting me every day. He's like, "Oh, I just bought another $1,000 worth of Bitcoin." People really just want to have fun and they don't want to think too hard. But when you do think hard, that really is where the money comes from half the time. But speaking on conviction and slower times, I think all of my massive plays, like the ones that kind of put me where I'm at today, they were all like 4 to 5 month holds. Um, Pups, for example, $200,000 market cap to a billion or whatever that was. It took about 4.5 months or 5 months. Pup, it's the same thing, 4 or 5 months. OMBs, same deal. Like pretty much with everything like that, the people who really that were early and they believed in the vision or the projects or the narrative or had conviction for whatever weird reason and stuck for those trades, as long as they knew when to comfortably exit and not get caught up in the euphoria, did pretty well. I definitely should have exited some more things, but when you're drowning in that, you don't really realize that your head's not on straight. But I think conviction with targets is a good thing. If you have conviction, it means that you have a thesis, and I don't believe you should buy something without a thesis. So
Yeah, I agree. And it's like, it's a bit of a spectrum between like the pure speculation and the conviction place. Like, all speculation, like on a different timeline in a sense. And it's the same with collecting. There's a bit of a blur between trading and collecting. Like, um, do I need dozens of OMB, or does anyone need dozens of OMBs or dozens of XYZ collection purely for the collecting of it? Some really might, right? Some really want to have dozens of them to give over to all their different grandchildren and great grandchildren. But I think most people will be honest to themselves and say that there's an element of speculation there as well. Even though the time frame is just different, right? So I think, yeah, for now in the Bitcoin ecosystem, for sure, like it just hasn't been rewarding, I think, for almost anyone to trade, so to say, right? Short-term trade, whether it's on non-fungibles or fungibles, right? For almost 12 months, that has been maybe changing a little bit in the last days. So I think naturally, the kind of activity and the people around are going to be the ones that are, the high conviction, longer term thinking ones or long term buyer ones. And that is actually not a big group of people across the space. I think it's still, I don't know what the proportion is, but I think there's maybe only like, I wouldn't exaggerate, it's probably only a few thousand people, right, who are in it to collect NFTs long term for the art, really for the joy of it. And then on the kind of fungible side, I mean, there's been pretty much no one, right? Like it's me and like 7 other people, right? Or maybe people in the space here, like 100 people that want to hold these coins for the cultural value and the long-term mimetic value, which obviously we believe there will be value to that, right? Speculative value to it later on, but it's that's kind of the state of the ecosystem right now, for better and for worse. I kind of like it, but obviously with the belief that at some point, things are easier to trade and that will bring more people on board, and, being early or retaining conviction in the face of, obviously lack of belief and epitaphs being written, right? That does pay off if you very asymmetrically, if we are correct. So,
yeah, I think right now the best way, because like I said earlier about I've been playing defensively, because you're right, since January, I mean, pretty much since literally January 20th after Trump coin came out, or the 19th, like the whole on-chain degen market just died. Like that was it. It's pretty much been just dry since then. But the predictable ways, at least in Bitcoin, if you for ordinals, which is what I can really speak on right now, if you want to at least have a shot at doing something well, it's really just like save the sats. If you like a community, you get it on discount on the red days. But like those quick flips, like for example, there were a couple the past few months that, like, if you were just paying attention and following the right people and within like the right groups, like you could have gotten into some things pretty early. Like anytime we'll see like a reputable dev that we've known from one way or another, or from someone that's attached to something that's making, like CB Spears, for example, like he has reputation in the space. So, that if he's posting some degen thing, like, yeah, you might not be able to flip it tomorrow, but there you go. That's a speculative project. Um, so like there are, and same with like the Alchemist Mint and things like that. That was like a new form of a token, like DMT stuff when it all came out. So if you really just kind of hold your bags and you wait, and they'll come. People are building cool things, and we're all sitting here twiddling our thumbs. Like it'll happen, and it happened right now. And I think people that are buying the Libitbus are speculating on whatever new Merkle tree NFT format they made there. So that, like, I would say that that's a speculative play right there that happened, but they happen, it happened 4 days ago, and all you have to do is just follow the right devs, and they go up in spaces, get in early, and you have a pretty good shot.
Wait, I have a question here. What are they using Merkle Tree for in NFTs?
I don't know, like the entire, basically they found a way to store 4 KB worth of data in a sat or something, and they're using, like, it has a depth of 128 Merkle trees, and like, or something like that, or it's like a depth of 120. I don't know the technical stuff, man. I just saw the tweets and started throwing money at it. So, but I mean, if you just look at CB Spears' account, and he has a whole explanation for the whole thing, and Life of FIFO made a tool that allowed people to wrap it, and then the people over at Sadflow and Magic Eden decided to index it. I mean, I think like there's still 7,000 unindexed, so be careful not suggesting anyone's buying anything. But they found a new way, a new cool thing. They said, hey, this is a new form of inscription. Try it out. It's like the same things when stamps happen. It's the same thing when they're just trying to play the whole narrative of it's completely immutable because it won't be printable or something. But yeah, kind of fun little experiment.
Yeah, they can't. They're going through the filters. You can't like that. To me, that's what I've understood as being like the basis of the entire concept was just a way to get through the filtering that's been happening, right? Because they entered like a hackathon and got, I think, second place in whatever hackathon, and then they released the project. Stu TXO is whoever's on the, I don't know how many people are on the team, but that's the person from the team that I discovered. STUTXO is their handle, and I think they're working on building out more of the project like right now as we speak. But one thing that I noticed that I think is analogous to a lot of the other things that we're kind of talking about that get to that level of conviction play. I think it's interesting, and I'm curious, like, what indicators you guys would look at, but, um, what I see is that early ecosystem development happening over again. Like, as soon as ordinals started, we started to create tooling around them. And even like you can even think of a spreadsheet and trading on spreadsheets as tooling for trading ordinals because it's just somebody that created something to support other people in their trading or themselves or whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be this like fully sophisticated built out product for it to be effective. We can have super effective really early ecosystems that are trading super actively, and that's the thing that I noticed about Labitbu. So I don't know what you guys think about that whole concept. Like what's the indicator that let you know early on this is something that I might throw into? I know B Ways, I think it was you mentioned Charlie being one of the people that was paying attention to it. So there's that aspect of people you're noticing or people that you follow that you trust, obviously, is one aspect.
Yeah, I don't think I said Charlie, but yeah, great dude.
Oh, is
Like, and I met him before. He's definitely great energy. Yeah, but it speaks to a point, right? It's definitely the builder energy, continuing when everything else is quiet. Then the builders are actually the most important indicator to me because the timeline will be really negative, for months on end, and infighting, and we've all been there, I think, or most of us have been in such situations, and then we really have to hold on to the builders and seeing what they're doing, and those timelines can take time, so you can find comfort in understanding those timelines, talking to the people that are building. So yeah, super important indicator for sure. And then also for me, really important in not just in ordinals and runes and so on, but in everything I look at is the development of a real culture, right? Over time. So not just people pumping and dumping, which is typically part of the early culture. And certainly was the case for ordinals as well. Like people were, it was the only shiny thing really, aside from some Solana stuff. But even at the time, Solana was not that interesting, H1 2023. So it was the only shiny object. So everyone that was still had the energy and was speculating in the space was really, maybe coming into ordinals and seeing what was happening there. So you have this early amalgamation of people of very different backgrounds without a really, consistent culture yet. And so when things kind of were in the state they were in for the last 12 months, we've definitely been looking at, does a solid culture that's more consistent start forming in our ecosystem? I think the answer is yes, personally. I think you've seen that improve, especially as prices kind of, people just gave up thinking about daily price movements, and started talking more again about the fundamentals and why does this all matter? Like, why are we here? So I think, yeah, having that kind of more ideological belief forming in a sufficiently big group of people, that is for me also important outside of the builders, right? So I think those two things for me are really critical. And then I think the third one, and then I'll shut up, is in our case is that it's on Bitcoin. That's a very big, for me, it's a very, very big factor to keep believing no matter what, right? Because Bitcoin is not going away, right? If this was on Cardano, right, I would have been like, okay, well, what are we doing with our time? Nothing against Cardano, but whatever other chain almost, right? Whereas with Bitcoin, Bitcoin is going to be around, and people care so much about Bitcoin and care about innovating on it. It's hard to put that genie back in the bottle, I think. And so I think you're always going to have people interested in this. In my opinion, it's hard for me to even imagine that like 3 years from now, 5 years from now, there will be no one tinkering around with ordinals and new protocols anymore. There will be zero tokens on Bitcoin. It's from me very hard to even fathom, right? So that is maybe the third factor for me.
Yeah, definitely agree. Barbara, I saw you came up. I want to give you a chance to unmute and speak and jump in on the conversation here. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, I'm so sorry I came in a tad late. I was hosting a space. I completely forgot that the times clashed. So it's good to be here. Oh my gosh, why am I sounding like that? Oh, it's good to be here. It's been interesting listening to B Ways and Sleepless. Those two help my conviction a lot. I'm not even going to lie to you. When Buways was mentioning like looking at builders, and Sleepless had also mentioned certain devs. There are also, for me, there are also people that I look at on the timeline and I know what to do immediately. Like I look at what they're saying, their analysis, and I know, okay, so this is what's going to happen. They are sort of like an indicator for me. And when we talk about conviction, I think that for the Ordinals culture, it's still building out in a way that I don't know, like I don't think that it's properly built out yet. Like it started to build out, and then at some point it felt like um it stopped a little bit. And then now I don't even know where we are, but we're still at the point where we're still building that conviction. And then for us to get there, people have to make a lot of, like Bitcoin from this space. When people make that kind of Bitcoin, they are more comfortable collecting. And when people outside the Bitcoin ecosystem see that happening, then they are also more comfortable and more confident in collecting art here. I've also seen like a few conversations start to happen with certain Ethereum collectors looking at ordinals and saying, "Oh, hey, I think that I'm just realizing that art on Bitcoin is interesting and stuff like that." So they are talking about it, which means that there are other people who are also in their circle who are having conversations like that. So it's only a matter of time till we start to have like those kind of art collectors come to Bitcoin to collect art. We haven't even hit the level of of collection when it comes like art collection. We haven't hit that level that Ethereum have hit yet. We still have like a lot more people who are trading the Ordinals collection, pre BRC 2.0 Ordinals collection, and all of those. We will get there. It's just time. It's just going to take time. And I think that with what the Bitcoin Art Society and other platforms like that are doing, showing those other folks that yes, it's possible to spend tons of Bitcoin to collect art on Bitcoin. It kind of has like a ripple effect, because there are whales who are watching, see people spending high amounts of Bitcoin buying art and collecting these pieces of art. They get interested. But if they're just like seeing people trade, like they're like, okay, what's going on here? And if they're trading and the volume isn't even, if the volume isn't attractive, then they're also not interested. So volume does play a lot of role also in attracting people and then keeping them to have that kind of conviction. I think we're having this conversation earlier on today, and I realized that like no matter what we say, even if we have like tons of innovation happening here, one of the key indicators that will get people to look at what's happening and also the innovation happening is the volume, right? We saw that happen with just 2 Sundays ago with the Admirals, Pump, Node Monks, and Puppets. So when that pump happened, if you were paying attention to the timeline, you would see there were tons of people who started to ask questions. We also saw like some Ethereum content creators started to say, "Oh, hey, Ordinals is also experiencing some kind of volume." So that brings more eyes, and then we had more people coming in to get whitelists for all of these collections. And then when the volume dried up a little bit, they all disappeared. So when we have that kind of volume and it becomes a little bit consistent, then these people are going to looking and say, okay, oh, hey, there are some innovative things actually happening here. And then they start to stay, they start to learn about the culture, they start to collect, and they also start to maybe build here. So I just wanted to add a little bit on that. But yeah, B Ways and Sleepless. Oh my goodness, you have no idea how much they influence my conviction. I look at them, they're still here, and I'm like, okay, yes, we're still on track. There are people like that, and you need to have conviction yourself, but you also need to have people that strengthen the conviction that you have.
So you think we're close, Barbara? Is that your thought process? Are we at late stage in the ecosystem development?
I think we're still very far. We're not close. Depending on what happens. So what I do think is, depending on what happens with there's the BRC 2.0 is coming. We have Arch Network as well. So depending on what happens with all these developments that are coming up, 2020, late 2025 and early 2026 will be like a really defining moment for us here on Bitcoin. Like people who are trading Bitcoin assets, it will be a defining point. So whatever happens within this period will determine if we would have like more people come join us, and if it would also build up on the conviction that people who are already here have.
Yeah, for sure. All right, everybody, we've been going for a little over an hour. We're probably going to wrap things up here in the next 5 minutes or so. As sort of a final question, and you can go off the rails a little bit on this if you have something you want to wrap up with. But one thing I wanted to just kind of pose as a sort of a wrap up type question to the panel is, what do you see as the most important aspect for your trading strategy for you to be successful? And not just anyone. I think that one of the important aspects about trading is growing as an individual, trying to get to the point where you truly are making your own decisions, from whatever indicators or wherever you make those decisions from, but it's you doing it. It's your understanding. Ultimately, if you're the one that's taking on the risk as the investor, the buyer, the collector, whatever it is, it should be your understanding that you're going into it with. So growth is always super important, and growing your you know ability to even have a strategy that is comprehensive enough, that covers like different scenarios, is long term enough. What do you guys see as the most important aspect for your own personal success when it comes to trading strategy? Go ahead, Mush.
Sorry, I'm like in a classroom, like ask me, ask me. So me personally, and not financial advice by any means, um, I like to DCA and forget that I bought it. That's I'm too big of a goldfish gambler, dude, to like be able to get in something, hold it. Like I get conviction with it, and I get stuck holding the bag every single time. So like for me, I like to DCA. I don't like to put, like, if I have 10 grand that I can put into Bitcoin or into Solana or into Polygon or whatever it is, I don't like to do one big lump sum. I like to do little bits here and here every time I see a 5% dip, and I just forget about it. And that has been what's worked best for me and my ADHD. And
Kind of gives you
it also, sorry, go ahead.
you find it gives you peace of mind a little bit?
Yeah, it also takes away the emotion from the trading for me too, because I'm following a structured plan where it's just like I'm buying bits and bits and bits and bits, if you will, and then it just sits there, right? And then for me, I believe, like, and this is what I believe for a long time, is that like I don't want to sell my assets. I want to be able to leverage them later to go to a bank and say, "Hey, give me a loan. I have X amount of Bitcoin or I have X amount of Solana," and those types of things, and then take their money out. And so I don't have to actually lose my money in any type of way. So I'm just holding it for the longevity of it. Like I want to retire my kids and stuff. So I always tell people I'm broke because I'm always DCAing, but that's just what's always worked best for me. And when I first got into crypto, people told me, just buy and hold, like the actual tokens, the actual, not the tokens, the actual currencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, like those types of things. And that's how that person, he's an old miner from back in like 2016, 2017. And so that is where I got that knowledge from. And at first I thought like, that's stupid. Like, but it's I followed it ever since. I've lost so much money, and it's always worked out best for me. And normally when like normies call me or my friends call me that I've onboarded into crypto, they always say, what should I buy? And I always say, well, I'm going to be doing this, not saying that you should, but I'm going to be doing this, and I'm going to be DCAing. And I always give an example of how much money I'm DCAing at one time, because I find you always want to stay a little liquid, right? You always want to have a little bit of liquid. So that's just my thoughts on it.
Oh yeah, that's definitely another aspect that goes with that for sure. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like this is like back to the basics, but for me, it's whatever chain has the hype, the volume, and you have an edge on in any way, to continue to like lock those profits to the native token, and then just hold on that or use it in DeFi and earn yield on it or whatever. So, for example, if Solana meme coins, as you mentioned, during like the when the trenches were hot, like January through March or whatever, like locking in those trades to Solana, then just holding on to Solana for however long. Or, I mean, I was the opposite side of this on runes. I actually like bought and held my runes. But for those that like, did well on runes at the beginning, locking in those sats and stacking Bitcoin is like an obvious, a way of like what it could have done. But not getting greedy and being like, oh, this is going to be like 100x if I hold on to this, for another year or so. But like locking in those sats on specifically for me, like meme coins or like coins, like with like ordinals and NFTs, I honestly don't trade as much. I'm more so just like hold, and I buy and hold, but that's just like, I mean, that's just the way that I do it. I usually like to go in and out of like more liquid stuff, but yeah, so like stacking the native token, we did that last cycle in ETH, like with whatever tokens that we were trading at the time, then just like stacking ETH. I like doing that when I am trading, like more aggressively, like day trading or like swing trading. Kind of like Mush said, I like to I like to not use all my powder in one buy. Again, I know that sounds obvious for a lot of people, but I see a lot of people, that will try to copy trade somebody, and they'll just like use their whole allocated amount in one buy. And then they're like, oh my God, you said it was going to go up. Well, it's down 15%. Now I'm down this much. It's like, well, yeah, that was like one of my like 5 to 10 buys. Like if something's trading at like a $1 billion, I mean, Pump would probably be a good example of that. Like I I did like some day trading with Pump when it first launched, and then I didn't touch it. And then this last like week or so, I figured that Alan was going to come back after being on Thread Guy's stream and then like disappearing for 2 weeks. So I started like doing a couple buys. I did like 4 buys on around like 0.026. It's back up to 0.033. But if I wouldn't want to risk my whole allocated portion of that in one buy. I instead buy, wait, depending on how long the trade is, minutes, hours, days, and then buy again. And then, that kind of like DCAs down. So all the way from like obvious DCAs like Bitcoin or ETH or whatever to like, even if you're like doing lower market cap stuff, just don't use like, I just don't use all your powder on like your first pie. Like I see that mistake so much. And I know like I'm preaching to the choir here. Everybody here knows this, but like a lot of people that are like just getting into it or new or like watching like again other platforms are a lot more fresh. They don't know that, and they'll see like, oh, Pengu token just dropped. Let me spend all of my money that I would have bought with it in one clip, instead of saying, okay, well, let me buy this, like one time a day for a week, or a couple times a week for a month or whatever. So yeah, the DCAs are like super important.
Yeah,
And then short time frame.
like the short term DCA, you DCA in and out of a position. And I feel like, if you combine that with your other concept that you're mentioning there, stacking the native token in whatever ecosystem or chain you're on, is a really good strategy. Like this is, especially if you then go and pair that with having that whole cross chain thought process of where do you want to stack for the longest term, which I mean, I think everybody here would probably say that Bitcoin is the one that you want to be having at least the highest percentage of your portfolio in that long term bucket, which to me, this is the ultimate value. We'll go to the rest of you guys here in just a second, but I just want to insert this in there. This is the ultimate value of what's going on Bitcoin ever since early 2023. What Arch is building is the pairing of DeFi itself and everything that it encompasses directly to Bitcoin so that we can stack the native token of all of crypto. We call it the mother chain. I like Ken's analogy, Chris, Ken from Pizza Ninjas, his analogy that he made in the video we put out, that Bitcoin is the father chain. I think that's hilarious because we always call it the mother chain. But yeah, this whole concept of stacking the native token, if you zoom all the way out of like all of crypto, stack what's the most native, which is Bitcoin.
So I also forgot to mention too, depending on like your stack and your goals, obviously, but don't be afraid to clip out on all-time highs of majors, obviously excluding Bitcoin, depending on who you are. But like, I clipped out during the Trump mania on Solana, like 25% of my bag in January. And it went up higher. It went up like, I think I clipped out around 300. It went up to like 350 or whatever it was. I don't remember. And like, obviously, part of me is like, oh gosh, I should have held longer. Like it's up 40 more percent than when I sold. And now it's back down to like 160. Right. So like, obviously now I don't feel bad and I'm sitting on stables that I could use to deploy wherever I want since those clip outs. So with everything besides Bitcoin, including ETH, I personally like to clip out a little bit on new all-time highs.
Yeah.
Dude, that's a good strategy, man. Selling at all-time highs, like it's like a dream. But
Well, when I say that, I mean like like the fresh. Like, I don't mean I'm literally timing the tops. I mean like when I see it breaking all time, like Solana again. Like
the previous,
yeah, when it broke the previous high, I sold some, and then it went a lot higher than that, and then it went back down. So that's what I mean. I'm not claiming that I'm tied to tops.
you're a little out there. I'm just being facetious, to be honest. I was just kidding. I totally got it. Yeah, I'll keep it short, but thanks for hosting. And I really look forward. I need to get a date before we leave. I need to get a date when mainnet is going live for Arch. Definitely really look forward to this, for especially for our fungible coins. But yeah, on the personal level, I don't really have, maybe a little bit on the left trading side. I've been trying to learn quite a bit over the last year, so I have some specific, goals of getting better at that. Right, like keep studying that. But I think otherwise, it's really, I think if you spend enough time maniacally on a certain niche, and this can be crypto or NFTs or Bitcoin ecosystem, I think that will naturally just improve your judgment, right, as to how to make decisions. And I think ultimately, kind of for good investment outcomes, judgment is what matters. So and that takes time and experience, and I think that's kind of where I'm at. Just keep staying, on top of the new stuff as well. Don't get too tired, and get stuck only in old things, but balance it out with also remaining excited about new stuff, but also not overly, right? Like, so that's, I think, a balance that's pretty hard to strike, is like stay enthusiastic, but also don't get carried away with all the new stuff and gamble things away. So I think that is a balance that I'll be particularly focused on, is to kind of try to strike that try to strike that right with enough time. So that's it. But thanks, Brian, for hosting. Really appreciate it, and good to chat with some people here that I hadn't seen for a
Yeah,
while.
appreciate you coming, and everybody. Anybody else want to share? I can't remember who all we've been around to so far. What's your most important aspect of trading strategy for yourself? And we'll wrap up here in a minute or so.
Thank you, Brian, for hosting this in the panel. It was definitely a fun and interesting conversation, especially because everybody's so many different things that they're good at and creators. But the kind of what they were saying earlier, being a community member is an easy way not to be a trader. So I always tell people, when, especially like, there's very few communities other than my own that I'm actually like a part of and active in. Some of that's mostly by design, because I used to get wrapped up in the whole thing back in the ETH days, and you never sell. So I started looking at it like, okay, I have two core groups that I like, and one's an alpha server. We don't have a PFP, so it makes it real easy to sell other ones. But, you can't the second you start getting emotionally invested into a community, into a project, you get caught up in that little, like, the bout of magic that happens with that and the euphoria or whatever you wanna call it. You see the sheer insanity. It makes it much harder to sell. But when you look at it like an asset, whether it's a coin or an NFT in particular, and it hits a price that makes you happy and you screenshot it and you're telling mom about it and it's in your server. We have a pinned message that neighbor always reposts where I think it goes down like 50 lines of, if you're happy enough for this, if you're happy enough for that, sell it, sell it, sell it. Because people don't, and then they get angry and they get resentful and then they revenge trade. So I always say stick to the plan, stick to your original thesis, sell when it hits your targets. Definitely don't unlist opiums at 0.6 like I did, thinking they'd go to 1 BTC. But, you know, we all live and we learn, right?
For sure. Oh man. Nico, Barbara, any final thoughts from you two before we wrap things up?
Uh, I'm gonna give you the disclaimer. I'm a retired cab driver, so don't listen to me. I can't even spell the word advice like on my profile. So yeah, don't listen to me at all.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead, Barbara. I saw you unmuted there.
Yes, I'm still trying to sell my runes bag. If anyone knows how to help me, please do help me. But I want to take a cue from what Sleepless said about, like getting emotionally attached. I think that that's one of the reasons why with Runes tokens and, like other fungible tokens, it's easier for you to, sell those ones than when you're holding like this originals collection and everyone is sharing how beautiful their art is, and you join the Discord and verify. Oh my gosh, like that's the end of it, especially for sometimes for some of the servers where they sell shame people, it becomes like extremely difficult. So I'm not much of a trader, but I'm learning a lot of things about controlling and managing greed and understanding the difference between like some of the pieces of art that you want to hold forever or for a long time as opposed to the ones that you want to trade. So that's one of the things that I'm learning, and with them I'm setting target for each of them. Okay, so I'm going to sell at this point, and I don't look back when I do that. I'm also one of my interesting trading strategies these days is to explore anything new. Like if you've been paying attention to Bitcoin, you'll notice that those who were able to get in on Ordi first, like the firsts of each of these new platforms always give you an opportunity to make money. So if you're able to getting on it early and you get those tokens, then you're able to sell and make some profit off of it. It was the same with Alkings, like the methane token. It was the same with Odin Fund, the Odin dog, and some of the other ones. So that's also a strategy that I try to implement when I pay attention to the timeline and say what's happening. I try my best getting on the tokens first. So if Arch is going to have a token, I'm definitely going to be keeping my eyes peeled to getting on that early, and also try my best to sell some of it. I'm sorry, Brian. I'll sell some of it uh, if I don't get attached. But that's my new strategy because I'm mostly trading here on Bitcoin. Most times if I trade on other chains these days, I forget. Like I have tons of tokens on Solana that I bought because someone asked me to buy, and I haven't even sold them. So don't listen to me. I'm horrible. I'm still holding my runes bag. So yeah.
Yeah, obviously, none of us here are financial advisors. We're all just telling our own personal opinions and storytelling of our experience as traders. So, nothing is financial advice. Talk to your financial advisor if you're looking to get into a position and, do your own research. But thank you, everybody, for coming. I know we got a couple questions about, like what's going on with Arch. Barbara, I can say for sure, definitively, there will be an Arch token. It'll be the native token within our network. Arch is DPoS mechanism and runs on verifier nodes similar to Solana, and this will be the native token, the Arch token. So we'll definitely have a token. I don't have any specific dates for you guys today. But the way that I'll answer it, and kind of what I've been telling people in Discord for the last, 6 months to a year, we had been putting out targets. We launched in October of last year on Bitcoin Testnet 4, and we had several launch partners with us. We've closed down our daily on-chain missions, though some things are still live on Testnet, and you can go, test them out. Some projects still have their own rewards that they're tracking for. Saturn is still live. Cha-ching. There's even been some projects that have launched more recently on testnet that you can check out, like Ordiz is one, for example, VoltFi. So everything is still live on testnet for anyone to go and test out. If you've never connected your wallet to our dashboard, then I highly recommend that you do that, definitely before mainnet, just to make sure that you're all set up and ready to go for when we relaunch missions on mainnet. Our website's dashboard.arch.network, and I'll put that down in the replies after the show if you want to go and find it, or you can find it from our previous posts. But to kind of answer the question a little bit about like timelines, so we had been sharing these loose targets of quarters when we thought we would launch in this year. I think the latest one we were thinking, and this was back in April, we had announced that we thought we'd be able to be on mainnet by Q3. We have since stopped announcing, like these rough targets of when we're going to be, because we're getting very, very close. So we've been working through and are nearly finished with our full security audit. We want to make sure that all of our tech is fully ready to go, fully tested, and super resilient when we launch on mainnet. Don't want to be putting people at risk with their assets, especially when this is Bitcoin. We're nearly done with that process, and we'll be making our final sprint and go to market for mainnet. So I don't have a date for you guys today because we've not actually set a date yet, but in the coming weeks you should see some activity ramping up, us, getting in position to make our final sprint and launch on mainnet. So stay tuned for that. We're really coming down to it, and things are getting exciting. So pay attention to the main account. We have our @Arch account, which represents Arch Labs, and then our more community focused account that is hosting this, Arch Network. If you didn't follow yet, please make sure that you're following. We put out a lot of content and repost a lot of content from different projects in the ecosystem. So if you want to stay, up front and center when it comes to what's going on in the Arch ecosystem, then make sure that you're following our account. And I would definitely put notifications on so you can stay active. But that's the update for as far as like where we're at, headed toward mainnet. We're very, very close. I know it's not going to happen in August, so I can tell you it's not going to happen in August, but beyond that, it is entirely up in the air as far as when we could be launching on mainnet. So stay tuned in the coming weeks for more information coming out, and things are about to get really exciting in Bitcoin DeFi for sure. Thanks everybody for coming. We really appreciate you joining. I know there's so many things you could be doing with your hour to hour and a half on a Tuesday afternoon or evening or late morning, whatever it is for you. So really appreciate you spending some time with us today and talking about trading. Thanks for everybody who came and listened, everybody that shares the space. We see you guys. We love this community. We love Bitcoin and all of the Bitcoiners, from the OGs to everybody that's come in since this whole ramp up in what's going to happen when we actually pull off DeFi on Bitcoin. So couldn't be more bullish myself, and we'll go ahead and put a pin in it here, and we'll see you next week on Tuesday.